The morning sun peeked through the blinds as Maya Johnson stared at the thick envelope on her kitchen table. The return address belonged to her grandmother's lawyer. 3 weeks had passed since the funeral, but the pain still felt fresh. Her grandmother Rose had been her rock, her inspiration, and the woman who taught her to stand tall no matter what life threw her way. Maya poured herself another cup of coffee before finally opening the envelope. Legal documents spilled out, along with a handwritten letter in her grandmother's elegant script. As she read, her eyes widened. "I don't understand," she whispered to herself, reading the letter again. According to the documents, her grandmother had left her a building, not just any building, but a 3-story brick structure in the heart of downtown Oakwood. The same building that housed the White Linen, one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city. Maya's phone rang. It was her best friend, Tasha. "Hey, you okay?" "I know today's tough," Tasha said. "Grandma Rose left me a building," Maya replied, still in shock. "That fancy place on 3rd Street with all those businesses." "What? For real?" Tasha's voice rose with surprise. "Girl, your grandmother was something else. Did you know she owned that?" "Not a clue," Maya admitted. "The letter says she bought it back in 1978. She kept it quiet all these years, running everything through a management company." Maya took the afternoon off from her job at the real estate development firm where she worked as a project manager. She drove downtown, parking across from the red brick building that now belonged to her. It looked different somehow, knowing it was hers. The building housed 4 businesses: the White Linen Restaurant on the ground floor, a law firm and accounting office on the 2nd floor, and a small art gallery on the 3rd. All high-end places that probably paid good rent. Maya read more of her grandmother's letter as she sat in her car. "I bought this building when no one wanted to sell property to a black woman," Rose had written. "I used money I saved for 20 years and had to have a white friend pretend to be the buyer. Times were different then. I kept quiet about owning it because sometimes silence is power. Now it's yours, baby girl. Do what you think is right with it." That evening, Maya called the management company listed in the documents. The manager, Mr. Reynolds, seemed surprised to finally speak with the actual owner. "Your grandmother was very private about her ownership," he explained. "She gave clear instructions that all communications go through us. The tenants never knew who owned the building." "And they still don't know?" Maya asked. "No, Ms. Johnson. As far as they're concerned, ownership is through Johnson Family Trust. They've never met the actual owner." Maya thought for a moment. "Let's keep it that way for now. I'd like to visit each business as a customer first, get a feel for how they operate before I introduce myself." "As you wish," Mr. Reynolds agreed. "Though I should mention that the White Linen's lease is up for renewal next month. The owner, Mr. Thornton, has been asking to buy the building for years." Maya smiled. Her grandmother had always taught her to know what you're dealing with before showing your hand. The next day, Maya researched each business in her building. The White Linen had glowing reviews online, though she noticed a few negative comments that seemed odd. One reviewer mentioned feeling unwelcome despite the excellent food. Another complained about being seated near the kitchen despite having reservations. "I should see for myself," Maya decided, picking up her phone to make a dinner reservation for the following evening. As she booked a table for one, she felt a flutter of excitement. This was the beginning of something new, a connection to her grandmother she never expected. Little did Maya know that her simple dinner reservation would set in motion events that would change everything. For her, for the White Linen, and for everyone involved. She closed her grandmother's letter and held it to her heart. "I'll make you proud, Grandma Rose," she whispered. "I promise." Maya spent the next day thinking about her dinner reservation at the White Linen. She wanted to look her best, not to impress anyone, but because her grandmother had always said, "Dress like you own the place, and one day you might." The irony wasn't lost on her that now she actually did own the place. After work, she went home and chose a deep blue dress that hugged her curves just right. She paired it with silver earrings that had been a gift from Grandma Rose on her 30th birthday. As she put on her makeup, Maya wondered what her grandmother would think about her plan to visit each business as a customer first. "You always did like to know all the facts before making decisions," Maya said to her grandmother's picture on her dresser. At 7:30 p.m., Maya pulled into the parking lot of her building. The white linen's elegant sign glowed softly in the evening light. Through the large windows, she could see white tablecloths, sparkling glassware, and well-dressed people enjoying their meals. Her stomach fluttered with a mix of hunger and nervous excitement. Inside, the restaurant smelled wonderful: herbs, butter, and something sweet baking in the kitchen. A blonde hostess stood behind a small podium, checking reservations on a tablet. When Maya approached, the woman looked up with a practiced smile that quickly faltered. "Good evening," Maya said warmly. "I have a reservation for one. Johnson." The hostess tapped at her screen, her eyes darting between Maya and the tablet. "Johnson, yes, I see it. Just one moment, please." Maya watched as the hostess whispered something to another staff member, who glanced over at Maya before disappearing into the back. Several empty tables with reserved signs sat in the main dining area, many with excellent views of the restaurant's stone fireplace or the large windows overlooking the street. After nearly 5 minutes of waiting, the hostess returned. "Right this way, please." Instead of being seated at one of the empty tables in the main dining room, Maya was led through the restaurant to a small table tucked in a back corner near the swinging doors to the kitchen. Servers bustled past every few seconds, and the noise from the kitchen, clattering dishes and shouting cooks, was clearly audible. "Is this the only table available?" Maya asked, looking pointedly at the empty tables they had passed. The hostess avoided eye contact. "I'm sorry, those tables are reserved." "I had a reservation too," Maya said gently. "The manager assigns the seating. I'm just following instructions," the hostess replied, already backing away. "Your server will be with you shortly." Maya sat down, smoothing her dress. She noticed a couple who had entered after her being seated at a prime table near the window. They hadn't mentioned having a reservation. A young server approached her table, looking uncomfortable. "Good evening, ma'am. Can I start you with something to drink?" "What wine would you recommend with your special tonight?" Maya asked. I'll have to check," he said, seeming surprised by the question. While waiting for her drink, Maya observed the restaurant. The white linen was clearly successful. Every table in the main dining area was now full or had a reserve sign. The clientele was almost entirely white, except for an Asian couple in the corner and Maya herself. When her wine finally arrived, Maya ordered the special, a pan-seared halibut with lemon butter sauce. The food, when it came, was delicious, but Maya couldn't help noticing that servers rarely checked on her, while tables in the main dining area received attentive service. As she was halfway through her meal, Maya noticed a well-dressed man in an expensive suit talking with the hostess. He kept looking in her direction, his face showing clear displeasure. Something in his expression made Maya's stomach tighten. She'd seen that look before, at college, at work, in stores. It was the look of someone who believed she didn't belong. The man straightened his tie and began walking toward her table, his steps purposeful. Maya put down her fork, sensing that her quiet dinner was about to become something else entirely. The man approaching Maya's table had salt and pepper hair, perfectly styled, and a custom-tailored suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. His face wore a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Good evening," he said, placing his hands on the back of the empty chair across from Maya. "I'm Richard Thornton, the owner of the White Linen." Maya set down her fork and offered a smile. "Hello, Mr. Thornton. The food is excellent." "Thank you," he replied, his voice smooth but with an edge to it. "However, I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding with your reservation." "A misunderstanding?" Maya asked, keeping her voice steady. Richard nodded, glancing around the restaurant before leaning in slightly. "We need this table for some regular customers who are arriving shortly." Maya looked around pointedly at the other empty tables in the main dining area, still marked with reserved signs. There seemed to be several other tables available. Richard's smile tightened. "Those are reserved for our special guests." "I see," Maya said, feeling her heart begin to race. "And what makes them special?" The fake smile disappeared entirely. "Look, let's not make this difficult. Perhaps you would be more comfortable at Jackson's Soul Food across town. The food there might be more to your taste." A wave of heat rushed to Maya's face. She had experienced this kind of treatment before, but never so blatantly. Several diners at nearby tables were now watching the exchange, some with discomfort, others with uncomfortable curiosity. I made a reservation just like everyone else, Maya said calmly, though her hands trembled slightly under the table, and I'd like to finish my meal. Richard's jaw tightened. This is a private establishment, and I have the right to refuse service to anyone. On what grounds? Maya asked, her voice stronger now. I don't need to explain myself, he snapped, dropping all pretense of politeness. Your table is needed for proper guests. An older couple at a nearby table looked down at their plates, clearly embarrassed by what they were hearing. A younger man from another table started to stand up, looking like he might intervene, but his date pulled him back down, whispering urgently. Maya felt a cold knot in her stomach. She knew she could fight this, make a scene, demand her rights. But decades of experience had taught her that sometimes, no matter how right you are, fighting just makes things worse. I haven't finished my meal, she said, her voice leveled despite the anger and humiliation burning inside her. Richard snapped his fingers, and a large man in a black suit appeared, the restaurant's security guard. Please escort this woman out, Richard said loudly. She's causing a disturbance. I'm not causing any disturbance, Maya protested, but the security guard was already standing beside her table. Ma'am, I need you to come with me, the guard said, looking uncomfortable but determined. Maya looked around at the other diners. Most averted their eyes. A few looked troubled but said nothing. No one spoke up. With as much dignity as she could muster, Maya stood, placed her napkin beside her half-finished meal, and reached for her purse. When she opened it to leave money for her bill, Richard shook his head. Your dinner's on the house. Just go. Those words stung more than anything else. Like she was being paid to leave, to disappear. The security guard didn't touch her but hovered close as Maya walked through the restaurant. The hostess looked away as they passed. Outside, in the cool evening air, Maya took a deep breath to steady herself. Richard had followed them out. Let me be clear, he said, his voice carrying across the sidewalk where several people waiting for tables could hear. We have standards here. A certain clientele to maintain. If you return, I'll call the police. Maya felt tears burning behind her eyes but refused to let them fall. Not in front of this man. Not in front of these strangers. You'll regret this, she said quietly. Richard laughed. I doubt that very much. Enjoy your evening elsewhere. Maya walked to her car with her head high, but once inside, her hands shook so badly she couldn't immediately put the key in the ignition. She sat there, breathing deeply, trying to process what had just happened. Then she remembered she owned the building. Maya sat in her car for a long time, the engine still off. Through the windshield, she could see people entering the White Linen, laughing and chatting, completely unaware of what had just happened. A couple who had been waiting outside was now being escorted to a table, probably her table. Her half-eaten dinner would be cleared away, as if she had never been there. Tears finally came, hot and angry. She gripped the steering wheel until her knuckles turned white, letting the emotions wash over her. The humiliation burned worse than the anger. Keep it together, she whispered to herself, words her grandmother had taught her long ago. Maya opened her purse and pulled out a tissue to dab at her eyes, careful not to smear her makeup. Then she reached for her laptop bag in the back seat. If she couldn't finish her dinner, she could at least do something productive with this horrible evening. She opened her laptop and logged into her email. The property management company had sent her all the documents related to the building the day before. Maya found the folder and opened the lease agreement for the White Linen restaurant. As she read through the legal language, her breathing steadied. The lease was indeed up for renewal in 30 days. Richard Thornton had been renting the space for 8 years with 5-year renewals. There was a clause about conduct detrimental to the property's reputation that could trigger early termination. Maya took screenshots of those sections, saving them to a folder she created called White Linen Incident. Then she opened a new document and began typing while everything was fresh in her mind, the hostess's reaction, being seated by the kitchen despite empty tables, Richard's words, the security guard, being escorted out. She included times, exact quotes as best she could remember them, and descriptions of who had witnessed the incident. A tap on her window made her jump. A young woman stood there, one of the servers from the restaurant. Maya hesitated, then lowered her window slightly. I'm sorry to bother you, the server said, looking nervously back at the restaurant. I just wanted to say, what Mr. Thornton did in there wasn't right. It happens more than you'd think. Has he done this before? Maya asked. The server nodded. I've worked here 3 months. I've seen him do this at least 4 times. Always to people of color, always with some excuse about reservations or dress code violations that don't apply to white customers. She handed Maya a small piece of paper. That's my phone number. If you're going to file a complaint or something, I'd be willing to back you up. I need this job, but this isn't right. Thank you, Maya said, genuinely touched by the young woman's courage. What's your name? Lily, she answered. I should get back before someone notices I'm gone. I'm really sorry about what happened. As Lily hurried back to the restaurant, Maya added her name and number to her document. She also wrote down what Lily had told her about previous incidents. Opening another browser tab, Maya searched for reviews of the White Linen. She sorted by lowest ratings first and began reading. Most complaints were about typical restaurant issues: slow service, overcooked food, high prices. But every few reviews, she found one that echoed her experience. Felt unwelcome from the moment I walked in, seated in the back despite the restaurant being half empty, different treatment based on appearance. Maya took screenshots of these reviews too, adding them to her folder. Her phone rang. It was Tasha. Hey, how was the fancy dinner at your new building? Tasha asked cheerfully. Maya took a deep breath. Not great. Actually, horrible. What happened? The owner kicked me out, said they needed my table for proper guests, and suggested I'd be more comfortable at the soul food place across town. He didn't. Oh, he did, with an audience too. Had security escort me out. There was silence on the line for a moment. Then Tasha asked, Did you tell him you own the building? No, Maya said, a small smile forming despite everything. He has no idea. Girl, Tasha said, what are you going to do? The next morning, Maya woke up with a clear head and a plan forming. After her phone call with Tasha last night, she had decided not to act on impulse. Her grandmother always said, when you have power, you have responsibility. Use it wisely. Maya called in to work, using a personal day. This was more important than any project deadline. She dressed in a crisp business suit, the one she wore to important meetings, and headed downtown to the building she now owned. Her first stop wasn't the White Linen, which wouldn't open until lunch. Instead, she went to the 3rd floor to visit the art gallery. The owner, an older woman named Grace, welcomed her warmly, assuming she was just a customer. Beautiful space you have here, Maya said, admiring the exposed brick walls and the way the morning light streamed through the tall windows. Thank you. We've been here for 12 years. The building has such character. Maya smiled. Have you ever met the owner of the building? Grace shook her head. No, everything goes through the management company. But they've been good to us. Fair rent, quick repairs. Not like some landlords downtown. Maya nodded, taking mental notes. After the gallery, she visited the accounting firm and law office on the 2nd floor. Both had similar stories. They were happy tenants who had never met the mysterious building owner. Around noon, Maya sat in a coffee shop across the street, watching as the White Linen prepared to open for lunch. She pulled out her phone and made a call. Mr. Reynolds, this is Maya Johnson. I'd like to set up a meeting with Richard Thornton about his lease renewal. But don't tell him who I am, just say the building owner wants to meet. After hanging up, Maya opened her laptop and continued her research. She had created a spreadsheet tracking negative reviews that mentioned discriminatory treatment at the White Linen. The pattern was clear. Certain customers were consistently treated poorly. Her phone buzzed with a text message from Lily, the server from last night. Mr. T is on a rampage today. Heard him bragging about kicking you out. Said it maintains the restaurant's standards. Several of us are uncomfortable. Let me know how I can help. Maya thanked her and added this information to her growing file. At 2:00 p.m., Maya met with her personal attorney, Anthony, at his office. She had known him since law school and trusted his judgment completely. So let me get this straight, Anthony said after hearing her story. This guy kicked you out of his restaurant, which happens to be in a building you own, and his lease is up in 30 days. Exactly, Maya confirmed. And based on my research, this isn't the first time. There's a clear pattern of discrimination. Anthony whistled. You could simply not renew his lease. That's your right as the property owner. I know, Maya said, but I want to handle this the right way, not just out of anger. They spent the next hour reviewing the lease agreement. The clause about conduct detrimental to the property's reputation was solid legal ground for early termination, but Anthony cautioned that it could lead to a legal battle. Do you have any witnesses besides this server, Lily? Maya nodded. I'm working on that. I've contacted some people who left those negative reviews. 3 have already responded and are willing to share their experiences. That evening, Maya visited Jackson's Soul Food, the restaurant Richard had rudely suggested she go to instead. The owner, Mrs. Jackson, was a community fixture who had run the place for 40 years. Of course I remembered you, Mrs. Jackson said when Maya introduced herself. You're Rose's granddaughter. She was so proud of you. Maya was surprised. You knew my grandmother? Mrs. Jackson laughed. Knew her? Child, your grandmother and I came up together. We were friends for over 50 years. As they shared sweet tea and talked, Maya learned things about her grandmother she'd never known. How Rose had quietly helped numerous black business owners secure property and loans when banks wouldn't work with them. How she had created opportunities where there were none. Your grandmother understood something important, Mrs. Jackson said. Real power isn't about getting revenge, it's about creating change. Maya left with a new perspective and the final piece of her plan falling into place. Tomorrow, Richard Thornton would learn who his landlord really was. The management company's office was on the top floor of a sleek downtown building with floor-to-ceiling windows. Maya arrived 15 minutes early for the meeting, dressed impeccably in a tailored burgundy suit that her grandmother had always said brought out her confidence. Anthony, her attorney, accompanied her, carrying a slim leather briefcase containing all the documentation they had gathered. Mr. Reynolds greeted them in the reception area. Ms. Johnson, good to see you again. Mr. Thornton is already here, waiting in the conference room. Perfect, Maya said. Does he know who I am? No, as requested. He believes he's meeting with a representative of the Johnson Family Trust. Maya nodded. Let's give him a few more minutes. I'd like him to be anticipating. They waited in Mr. Reynolds' office, watching the minutes tick by. At exactly 10 minutes past the scheduled time, Maya nodded to Anthony. It was time. Mr. Reynolds led them to the conference room and opened the door. Richard Thornton was seated at the table, scrolling through his phone with an irritated expression. When he heard the door, he stood up quickly, smoothing his tie. Finally, he began, then froze as he recognized Maya. His face cycled through confusion, disbelief, and then alarm. Mr. Thornton, Mr. Reynolds said formally, allow me to introduce Ms. Maya Johnson, the owner of the Johnson Family Trust and your landlord. Richard's mouth opened and closed without sound. Maya stepped forward and extended her hand professionally. Mr. Thornton, we meet again. Richard recovered quickly, forcing a smile as he shook her hand with visible reluctance. Miss Johnson, what an unexpected surprise. Please, let's sit, Maya said, taking the seat at the head of the table. Richard lowered himself back into his chair, his earlier confidence completely evaporated. I wasn't aware, that is, I thought the Johnson Family Trust was. Was what, Mr. Thornton? Maya asked pleasantly. Nothing, he said quickly. I just never knew who owned the building. Maya smiled. That was by design. My grandmother, Rose Johnson, purchased that building in 1978. She believed in letting her properties speak for themselves, without the owner's identity influencing business relationships. Richard's complexion had paled noticeably. Your grandmother owned the building all this time? Yes, and now I do. Maya kept her voice calm and professional. I understand you're interested in discussing your lease renewal. Richard attempted to regain his composure. Yes, absolutely. In fact, I've prepared a proposal. He slid a folder across the table. I'm also interested in possibly purchasing the building if you consider. Before we discuss any of that, Maya interrupted. I believe we have another matter to address. Anthony opened his briefcase and removed a folder, placing it on the table between them. What's this? Richard asked, not reaching for it. Maya opened the folder herself, revealing printed screenshots of restaurant reviews, statements from former customers, and on top, a detailed account of her own experience 2 nights ago. This is a pattern of behavior that violates several clauses in your current lease agreement, Maya explained. Specifically, conduct detrimental to the property's reputation and discriminatory practices. Richard's face flushed. Those are baseless accusations. You're obviously doing this because of a simple misunderstanding the other night. If I had known who you were. That's exactly the point, Maya cut in, her voice sharp. How I was treated shouldn't depend on who you thought I was. Every person who walks through those doors deserves respect. My establishment caters to a certain clientele, Richard argued, his voice heartening. I have the right to maintain the atmosphere my regular customers expect. Actually, Anthony spoke up, federal and state laws clearly prohibit discrimination in places of public accommodation based on race, color, religion, or national origin. Richard's confident facade cracked completely. Look, he said, leaning forward desperately, I'm sorry about the other night. It was a misunderstanding. I was having a bad day. Let's start fresh. I'll even offer a higher rent for the renewal. Maya studied him, seeing the fear behind his eyes, not fear of legal consequences, but fear of losing his prestigious location, his status symbol. Mr. Thornton, she said finally, I've made a decision about your lease. Richard leaned forward in his chair, his eyes fixed on Maya. The confidence that had defined him 2 nights ago at the restaurant was gone, replaced by barely concealed desperation. I hope we can work something out, he said, his voice artificially pleasant. The White Linen has been in that location for 8 years. We're practically an institution downtown. Maya kept her face neutral. Mr. Thornton, I will not be renewing your lease. The words hung in the air between them. Richard's face went from pale to red in seconds. You can't do that, he sputtered. That's retribution. It's not right. It's not legal. Anthony cleared his throat. Actually, Ms. Johnson is under no obligation to renew your lease. It's completely at the property owner's discretion, as stated in Section 12 of your current agreement. This is because of the other night, isn't it? Richard demanded, his composure completely gone. One misunderstanding and you're going to destroy my business. Maya shook her head. This isn't about just the other night. This is about a pattern of behavior that doesn't align with the values of ownership. My grandmother didn't break barriers and face discrimination her whole life so that her building could be used to perpetuate the same treatment against others. Richard stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. I'll sue. I'll take this to court. You're welcome to try, Anthony responded calmly, tapping the folder of evidence. But I'd advise against it. The documentation here, plus the witness statements we've collected, would make for a very public legal battle that I don't think would benefit your reputation. Richard looked from Anthony to Maya, then to Mr. Reynolds, searching for an alley and finding none. His shoulders sagged slightly. What am I supposed to do? Just close down? 30 days isn't enough time to find a new location and move a restaurant. For the first time, Maya felt a flicker of sympathy for the man, not for his actions, but for the employees whose livelihoods depended on the White Linen. People like Lely who had been brave enough to speak up. You have 60 days, Maya said finally. That's an extra month beyond what your lease requires. But after that, we'll need the space emptied. Richard sank back into his chair. For what? What are you going to do with it? Maya allowed herself a small smile. I have plans. 6 months later, Maya stood in the center of what had once been the White Linen. The space was transformed, the stiff white tablecloths replaced with warm wood tables, the cold decor exchanged for colorful local artwork, the exclusive atmosphere swapped for one of welcome. Tonight was the grand opening of the Community Table, a culinary incubator program offering rotating residencies to talented chefs from underrepresented backgrounds. The current chef, a young woman who had learned cooking from her Filipina grandmother, was preparing her family's recipes with a modern twist. The place was packed. Every table was filled with a diverse crowd of diners eager to experience something new. Maya saw some familiar faces. Grace from the art gallery, Anthony and his family, Mrs. Jackson from the soul food restaurant who had become a mentor to the program. And there was Lily, now the front-of-house manager for the Community Table, greeting guests with genuine warmth. We're completely booked for the next 3 weeks, Lily told Maya excitedly. and the food critic from the newspaper is here tonight." Maya nodded, looking around at what they had created. In the entrance hall hung a beautiful portrait of her grandmother, Rose Johnson, her eyes kind but determined. Beneath it, a small plaque told part of her story: how she had quietly purchased buildings when others wouldn't sell to a black woman, how she had created opportunity where there was none. Tasha appeared at Maya's side, handing her a glass of champagne. "Your grandmother would be so proud," she said, looking around at the bustling restaurant. "You didn't just get revenge, you made something better." Maya raised her glass in a silent toast to her grandmother's portrait. The space that had once been a site of humiliation and exclusion was now filled with laughter, conversation, and community. People of all backgrounds shared tables and broke bread together. The building had finally become what her grandmother had always hoped it would be, a place where everyone belonged. To Grandma Rose, Maya whispered, "This one's for you."